and welcome back to my channel. In today's episode I'm going to be combining two formulas to create a very powerful lookup function. Towards the end of the video we should be able to recreate a model like this, where I can select the currency as well as the month, and Excel should correctly pick up the value from the made up table here. Traditionally, as in all my other videos, I'm going to also give you an example of how you could use it in the real life. There's a lot to cover, so let's get started. I'm going to start with the easier formula, which in this case is match. At the moment those probably don't make much sense to you, but let me explain what I'm doing here. Now let's imagine a spider. If I wanted to explain to someone where that spider is, it's really difficult at the moment because there are no objects relative to the spider. Let's add two chairs and a string in between them. If I now take a ruler and measure the distance from the first chair to where the spider is, I have my dimension. And that is exactly what the match formula does. In its simplest form, it's going to help us identify where the spider on our line is. Let's find some empty cell, B6 for example, and then if I go to formulas, lookup and reference and choose match, Excel will bring the wizard. Now our lookup value is a spider, which I'm going to type in quotation marks. Lookup array is our line, and if I click on that arrow I'm able to select the entire range, so that's B4 to F4. And match type, for the moment, let's just say this is a 0. If you recall from my VLOOKUP videos, there's explanation to that. However, for the scope of this video, I think it's sufficient to say to just leave it as a 0. If I click OK to that, Excel will give me 2, which means spider is in a second position from within that range, which indeed is correct. Now, if I move a spider one cell and change this one to line again, you can see that the formula updates. In fact, all those could potentially be empty or have any value and the formula should still work. Also, if I delete spider from here and bring it here, you can see that the formula updates. Now let me undo it a couple of times and show you that this formula would also work if the lines were vertical. So if I copy everything and paste it here as a transpose, I could step into our formula and change the reference to the vertical one, and if I hit enter, as you can see, it is still free. If I delete this one and bring it up, we should be seeing 2. Now that we know what match formula does, let's get into index. Now finding the spider's position on the line was very easy, as it's only one dimension. What would happen, however, if the spider was sitting on the chessboard? You could simply take rows and columns from the chessboard and identifying spider's positions to be something like A1 or B7, or you could add two rulers to be more precise and find the exact distance from the top and from the left. That is exactly what index formula helps with. However, this time it's not looking for a value, it's actually retrieving a value based on your criteria. Once again, using our cartoon analogy, this is our chessboard. It's the range of values I artificially created, which basically gives you column name and row number for each cell from the range A1 to C10. Now there is no spider on it just yet, but we're going to bring him in a minute. Let's start with writing the index formula. Going to find an empty cell, and I could just go to formulas, lookup and reference and select index, or I can simply write it down. So if I start typing index, I have two ways of entering this formula. I'm going to ignore the second one for the moment, as I would like to focus on connecting the match and index formulas. So let's stick to the first method. The first thing it asks me is the array. An array in our definition is our chessboard, so it's going to be the entire range of filled cells from A1 all the way up to C10. Now the second question is, what is the row number? And I'm going to say 1 for now. And then in that range, what is the column number? If I say 1 to that, we're going to get A1 as a value. Using our cartoon analogy, what we just told Excel is take a chessboard, which is A1 to C10, and then put the ruler next to it and measure 1 unit down from the top of the chessboard, which effectively is this row. Then take another ruler and measure 1 unit to the right from the beginning of the chessboard. Intersection of those two lines is exactly A1. Let's do a couple more examples to better demonstrate the idea. If I change this value to, for example, 2, and this value to, for example, 3, we should be seeing C2 as a result of the formula. That is because if you look closely, once again, our chessboard, we're counting 2 rows from the top, so 1, 2, and then 3 columns from the left, so 1, 2, 3, which is exactly C2 point. Just to show you maybe one more example, let's change that to 3, and we should be now seeing C3. 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, now let's bring in our spider. See, unlike match formula, index doesn't search for a spider. All index can do is give you the value of the reference you provide. Looking at our chessboard, I can see that the spider is 4 rows down from the top of our chessboard, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 column from the left in our chessboard. If I change that to 4, and then this one to 1, we've got our spider. So now we have match, which is capable of finding our spider, however it can only work on 1 dimension, and we have index, which doesn't find anything but is able to work in 2 dimensions. The combination of the two formulas gives us a powerful lookup formula. In the next step, I've created a very simple table that basically gives you a currency in a given month for 5 months. This is of course made up name just to demonstrate the formula, and as you can see, in January and euro we have January euro exchange rate, then January USD, February USD, and so on. So basically a combination once again of column headers and row names. In cells C8 and C9 I created a simple data validation so that in C8 user can only select the currency, and in C9 user can only select a month. Sticking to our analogy, this is our chessboard. The spider can be sitting anywhere from within those range. Where exactly? We are asking user to tell us. The user will tell us the location of the spider by selecting the combination of currency and a month. Our job is to locate that value. Let's start with an easier version of this problem. Let's assume that the user will only be able to select January, and from there he or she can choose which currency it is. I'm going to start typing index, and in here my chessboard is only going to be column B, as we know that it will always be January. Now when it comes to row number, I can for now write a definite value. And as you can see, the column argument is optional. Square brackets means that the argument is optional. So I could either leave it blank or just say 1 just to keep it consistent. As you can see, we have the correct January EUR rate. This is great. However, if I change the currency, nothing happens. In order for this formula to respond to user changes, we need to replace this number to something that changes according to user selection, and this is exactly where the match formula comes in. Now let's get into this formula and replace 1 with match. I need to remember to open and close the bracket, otherwise Excel will throw in an error. Now if you remember our match formula, first is asking us what is the value we're looking for, like a spider in the previous example, and in our case it's going to be the cell C8, which is currently US dollar. Now the second question is, where are you looking for this value? And in our case, it was the string between two chairs. This is going to be this column. Third type, as agreed, let's leave it as 0. And if I hit enter, we should get the correct value. If I change this to forints or euros, I should always get the correct answer. Now let me step into the formula to show you what it does. See, Excel will first look at the match section of this formula. What we're telling Excel here is take two chairs, put the first one in cell A3 and the second one in cell A5. Pull a string between those two chairs, and on that string place euro, dollars and Hungarian forints symbols. Now, having done that, take the value from cell C8 and with the ruler tell me what is the distance from the first chair to that value. If I evaluate this part of the formula, so if I highlight it and press F9, as you can see, it gives me 1. That is because if I look at the euro is 1 unit away from the first chair. Now if I change that to, for example, dollars and evaluate this now, as you can see, this is giving me 2. Now after that's done, the next step is to apply the index formula. So let me once again evaluate this part, and what happens next is take our chessboard, entire column B, and on the chessboard locate the position 2 rows down, so 1, 2, and 1 column to the right, which is exactly this one. How to convert it so that we also can select a month? You probably guessed it, but the only thing we need to do is change the size of our chessboard and add 2 more chairs and 1 more string. So let's get to that. Let's delete the formula completely and start from the scratch. If I start typing equals to index, this time our chessboard will be the entire blue section. For our row number, we need to find out which one that is, depending on the selection of the currency. So once again, we're going to start with match, and let me close the bracket to make sure I remember. And then the lookup value in our case will be whatever the user selected in cell C8. And our lookup array, so the 2 chairs and a string, will be A3 to A5 as before. Match type will stay as 0. Now we're moving to the next one, which is the column number. And this time we're going to do exactly the same, just on the columns. So if I start typing match, and our lookup value will be the month selected by the user, and our 2 chairs with the string, entire headers of the months. Match type once again will be a 0, and if I close the bracket and then close the bracket again for the index formula, we get the formula that will evaluate correct value depending on the user selection. Now let me show you one more example before we move on to our practical application part. If I go to VLOOKUP, I created a really tiny table which gives me a value and a country. Now if I wanted to use VLOOKUP to tell me what is the value for a given country, I'm not able to do it because the values are stored on the left. So we can use index and match to help us solving this problem. In our case, we're looking for a chessboard which is B3 to B5 because this is where our values are stored. And the row number will simply be a match of, let's say, we're looking for Brazil, from within this string between 2 chairs, and the match type being 0. If I close the bracket to that, as you can see, it's 1. I can of course change that to, let's say, Germany, and just to show you that it's not case sensitive, we get the correct value again. Now we are ready to apply this knowledge in practice. I'm going to open the HMRC website, which is the UK government website, and search for exchange rates. From there, I'm going to go with the first link. It might be different for you if you're viewing it in the future. And then let's say I want to see the November, so I'll hold Control and click on this one to open it in the new tab. And I also want October. Let's quickly check what they are. Now that I know that they both exist, I can go back to the first tab and right click on the View Online, copy link. If I now go back to my Excel, go to Data, Get Data, from other sources, and then from web, I can now paste my address into the dialog. So Ctrl V or right click and paste. Excel will offer me sections of the document that I'm most likely interested in. In my case, this is going to be the table 0, and I'm simply going to load that in. And just like that, I have November values in. Let's bring in the October values. I'm going to go back to the website and this time right click on the October. If I copy link to that, I can go back to my Excel and then right click on the query and say edit. In my Power Query editor, I can add another query. The current one resides here and it's called table 0. Let's maybe change it to November so we can better understand what's where. I can go to new source and once again go to other sources, web, and in the dialog box that comes up, once again paste the value. Click OK to that. Same as before, Excel will ask me which part of the document I want, and in my case this is a table. If I click OK to that, we can now see two queries. I'm gonna change this to October as well. The next step will be to join the two queries together. Now the next question will be, what are the columns that connect the two together? In my case, I'm going to connect them on the country column. So if I select country here and country here, I'm hoping that the countries didn't change over a month, and looking at the message here, it seems they didn't. So this last part I'm not going to explain in this video. For the moment, let's leave it as it is. I'm going to click OK to that. Now Excel added one more column to my query, and I can use all fields available from the other query. So if I click on those two arrows, I could potentially select everything. However, all I really need is currency units per £1. If I click OK to that, you will see that I have one more column. Now let's rename those columns to make sure we know which one is which. This one here is the October, and that's November. If I click Save and Close now, Excel will create a table that gives me all countries with their currencies as well as October and November exchange rate. Let me close this one down to make more space. Let me zoom in a little and populate a couple of cells. I'm going to name this one currency, and I'm going to name this one month. Let's add colon to this one as well. Now let's maybe make them bold. And then for a month, I want users to only be able to select the months we have. So to do that, I can go to Data and then go to Data Validation and select List. Now our list is going to be only two values here. If I click OK to that, as you can see, we only have October or November. And let's do exactly the same for the currency. So once again, Data Validation, choose a list, and then the source this time is going to be, let's stick to currency code. Enter, OK. Now I can choose from the whole range of values for currency as well as the two values for the month. The last cell I'm going to call exchange rate. And all it will do is simply retrieve the exchange rate based on the criteria we select. So let's start typing index. And in this case, the chessboard will be column D and E, so I can select the two of them together. You probably noticed that Excel automatically created a table for my queries. Now the row number is going to be determined by the match formula. So once again, the string between two chairs, and the value we're looking for the row is actually stored in H3. This is the currency code. So if I click on that, the lookup array for that will be the entire currency code column. So if I change this to that arrow, select the entire column, and match type will be a 0. Let's do the same for the columns. And the lookup value this time is going to be my selected month. Our string is going to be D3 to D1 to E1, so just those 2 months. Once again, we could have the entire year populated here, and this formula would work exactly the same, and the match type is going to be a 0. Now if I add one more bracket and hit enter, we should be seeing the correct value. So if I check this one, this is Algerian currency, and the month is October, which we're seeing 149. If I change it to November, just to quickly validate, as you can see, the value is correct. And let's maybe try one more currency, something ALL, for example. Once again, 142 for November and 136 for October. This is all I planned for this episode. Thanks for your time taken to watch this video. I would like to also say huge thanks to everyone who watched my previous videos. If you want to stay up to date and be notified whenever I publish new episode, please click the subscribe button. Every like, every subscribe helps me a lot. Thank you, and see you in the next episode.